Now let's go to Daniel 7 again. Brother Rick read that other beast. Wow, we didn't even get past these first 7. Okay. Ooh, all right, verse 6. I know you guys already know, but let's look at the description. Let's see the description. It says, after this, I beheld, Daniel chapter 7. Does somebody want to read verse 6?
Okay, Daniel chapter 7.
Yeah.
Verse 6. Can everybody hear me?
Yes, yes, sir.
After this, I beheld, and lo, another, like a leopard, which had upon the back of it 4 wings of a fowl. The beast had also 4 heads, and dominion was given to it.
All right. Beast of a leopard. Jeremiah already foresaw a lion, a bear, a lion, a leopard, but he said a wolf as well, but we're going to see with that wolf. So it says here, a leopard, 4 wings of a fowl, 4 heads. The heads of a beast represent something in prophecy. Does anybody know what that is? Oh, you're muted, Brother Shaw. You was saying something?
4 heads. The question was, you put on the floor, what does the 4 head represent?
Right.
And that's leadership of government.
Right. Right. So the heads represents the leadership of that government. Nathaniel?
4, you said?
I'm sorry?
Yeah. Well, I was going to mention on something other than the heads, but if you want, I can mention it.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I see a heads representing like a division in power, just like, when we didn't really look at it, but in Daniel 8 talking about that he-goat, the one horn breaks off.
Oh, wait, not yet. We gotta go.
Okay, well, I'll hold up then. Go ahead.
That's good. No.
Well, I'll mention this if I can. Another connection here in Daniel 7:6. In rule was given to it. So we see a leopard, 4 wings of a bird, also has 4 heads, and rule was given to it. So when we go to Daniel chapter 2, verse 39, it says, and another 3rd kingdom of bronze that rules over all the earth. And so that word that it has for rule in Daniel 2:39, H7981, it's kind of similar to the word that they have for dominion, H7985. There, H7981 in Daniel 2:39 is a root word of the word for dominion that we have in Daniel 7:6, H7985. So I just wanted to point out another connection between the 3rd kingdom and rule given to it.
Right. Good. So we got the brass, we have the gold, silver, brass, we have the lion, the bear, now we have the leopard. And then the leopard had 4 heads. Now each kingdom, a head represents, like what Brother Shaw said, dominion or rulership. And what Nathaniel said, it had multiple heads on the same beast, meaning that this kingdom had multiple rulers over this one kingdom because it's on the same body. Here's the interesting thing: it had 4 heads, and the dominion was given to it. Given to the 4 heads. Let's go back to Daniel chapter 8. Let's go back to Daniel chapter 8. There was something that was going against this ram. In verse 5 of Daniel chapter 8, we see what was going against the ram, verse 5 and 6. It says here, I was considering, and behold, a he-goat came from the west on the face of the whole earth and touched not the ground, and the goat had a notable horn between his eyes. And he came to the ram that had 2 horns, which I had seen standing before the river, and ran unto him in fury of his power. And I saw him come close unto the ram, and he was moved with choler against him, and smote the ram, and broke his two horns. And there was no power in the ram to stand before him, but he was cast down to the ground and stamped upon, and there was none that could deliver the ram out of his hand. Now remember, we said the ram was Medo-Persia. The next kingdom, many people know, according to scripture, is the kingdom of Greece, and it had one notable horn. Who was the one
Alexander the Great.
notable king of Greece? Was Alexander the Great.
The Great.
Now watch this. Now where are we? Okay, now watch this. It says here, verse 8, therefore the he-goat waxed very great, and when he was strong, the great horn was broken, and it came up, how many? 4 notable ones towards the 4 winds of heaven. How many heads does the leopard have? 4 heads does the leopard have. So Alexander's kingdom, when he died, he broke his kingdom up into 4 and gave dominion to the 4 heads. So it says here, now his kingdom was broken up into 4 directions, north, east, south, west. Yeah, we're going to stop right there because it still continues. It still continues connection with Daniel chapter 8. Now let's look at verse 21. Verse 21 of Daniel chapter 8, it says, and the rough goat is the king of Grecia, the king of Greece. And the great horn that was between his eyes is the first king, which is Alexander the Great. It's literally telling you what kingdom, what king, is literally telling you what was going on. And history, and this is what got me, is that I did a study on him in school. And when I read this, I was blown away out of my mind, because I did a study about he died around his 30s, and he gave his kingdom. He died alone, and he gave his kingdom to 4 of his generals. And I did a whole study on the background of this kingdom. And then when I read prophecy, I was just like, oh yeah, that's it. That's it. So now we have a leopard with 4 heads, just like how the goat's horn turned into 4 pieces in 4 directions of the winds. The winds, meaning when Greece took over the nations, it took over the nations fast. That's why it says that the goat didn't even touch the ground. It was moving. It didn't even touch the ground, it says, and you could not deliver the ram or the following kingdom out of his hand. Go ahead, brother Nathaniel had his hand, then brother Shaw. Go ahead, Nathaniel.
Yeah, I was going to mention that specifically is 331 BC. That's the Battle of Gargamella that the Macedonian Greek king Alexander beat Darius III in probably one of the greatest battles of antiquity. There's 3-to-1 odds. Darius III had war elephants, and they had early version of hand grenades, and the Macedonian Greek king Alexander beat him. And then after he beat him, the ram had no power to fight against him, which is exactly what scriptures say. I was going to mention the wings of the leopard has wings of a fowl or wings of a bird, meaning that it's moving fast as the ram doesn't touch the ground. It's moving fast. The other point that I had mentioned earlier about it, Daniel 2, what was that, 236, I think 239, that it rules over all the earth, which connects with the dominion was given to it, about the leopard having dominion. I believe, and I'm not going to touch on it any more than this. I believe that's why the 4th beast, as we see in Revelation 3, takes that body of the leopard, because the leopard had the dominion of earth given to it. And so that's why I think that that 4th beast takes the body of the leopard, because dominion was given to that body, and so they took the dominion of the earth from that body and then made it their own dominion.
And yeah, because you're going to Revelation 13, which in Daniel couldn't describe this beast, but when John was describing it, it was like an amalgamation of every beast, and the body itself was a leopard beast. So it looked mostly like a leopard. It moved like a bear. It just spoke like a dragon. I mean, like a lion. So it's very interesting that you bring up that point. That in Revelation 13, the body itself looked like a leopard. It wasn't the leopard, but it looked like a leopard. But we're gonna see that Daniel is trying to describe this beast, and there's like no specific animal that he can describe it, but he does give certain descriptions that point us back to Daniel 2. Now watch. Go ahead, Brother Shaw.
All right. Just to support what you're saying about the Grecians, and I'm going to read from Maccabee Rishon, the first Maccabee, first chapter. And it happened after that Alexander, the son of Philip, the Macedonian, who came out of the land of Kittim, Chaldeans, and had smitten Darius, king of the Persian, and Madai. So that's the silver kingdom. Mm-hmm. He destroyed it. And he reigned in his stead, and the first over Yavan, Grecian Empire. In many, many wars, won many strongholds. I mean, he moving real fast and slew the kingdom of the earth. You know, that's probably why they call it the leopard. Because if you know anything about that animal, there's one thing a leopard can do. It's not as fast as a cheetah, but it's more deadly. And it's swift with a prey. It can even climb up the trees and get them.
Right.
So, and can swim. And so Alexander reigned about 12 years. So he really didn't get a chance to enjoy it too much.
No, he didn't.
And then he died. And then his servant bore ruled everyone in his place. Those would be the 4 people that you were talking
about. Right. And then he divided it, 4 generals, different provinces of this kingdom. But we know when a kingdom is divided, we know that it's not strong. So now watch this. So we have the gold, the silver, the brass, Babylon, Medo-Persia, Greece. We have the lion, the bear, the leopard, Babylon, Persia, Medo-Persia, and Greece. We already know what the next kingdom is. The iron, and we're going to see this terrible beast. Now watch this. Daniel chapter 7. We're going to look at verse 7. We're going to look at verse 7 and 8, and we're going to probably have to close and then continue from Daniel 7 next week. Daniel 7 and 8. It says, Daniel chapter 7, verse 7 and 8. It says, after this I saw in the night visions, behold, a 4th beast. It said, dreadful and terrible, strong exceedingly. It had great iron teeth. And it devoured and brake into pieces and stamped the residue with his feet. And it was diverse from all the beasts that was before it. And it had 10 horns. I considered the horns, and behold, there came up another horn, little horn, before whom there was 3 of the first horns plucked up by the roots. And behold, in the horn were eyes like the eyes of a man, and a mouth speaking great things. Let me see. I think there's a little more description of this beast. But we see that the beast had iron teeth. Look at what it describes here later on, right? This horn. It says here in verse 17, it says, these great beasts, which are 4 kings that shall arise out of the earth. But the saints of the Most High shall take the kingdom, possess the kingdom forever. See, bringing us back to the stone. Kingdom forever, even forever and ever. Then I would know the truth about the 4th beast, which was diverse from all the others, exceeding dreadful, whose teeth was of iron, and it says, whose nails was of brass. These are the 2 last elements. When the Roman kingdom came into power, what was it referred to in historical referencing? If we have Greece,
iron,
we have the iron. Now we have the iron teeth and the nails of brass. What was brass?
The nails, the money.
What kingdom was brass? In Daniel 2, what kingdom was brass?
Oh, well, Alexander the Great.
Right, Greece.
Uh-huh.
When the Roman Empire began their reign, it was referred to as the Greco-Roman era. It was a combination, just like what Brother Nathaniel was saying. It was a combination of, well, it was a highly emphasized Greek, established nation. They took everything from the Greeks and twisted it up. It's kind of like the Quran and the scriptures. They just shake it up in a blender and then pour it out. So the Greco-Roman era was when the Roman Empire began its reign. When it began its reign, it took over the Greek Empire. It didn't just take over the Greek Empire. It took everything that was Greek. The architecture, the way that they built structures, the way they took their gods and renamed it. The same gods that's in the Roman Empire is in the Greek Empire, is in the Persian Empire, is in the Babylonian Empire. So it just consumed everything and amalgamated everything into one. That's why we see the teeth of iron, the nails of brass, and previously the vision of Nebuchadnezzar is that the brass was the Greek Empire and the iron was the Roman Empire. Go ahead, Wesley.
Just want to throw in on the 10 horns. There was 10 divisions of the Roman Empire.
Yes, there was. Yes, there was, which we're gonna touch on that in a second. Go ahead, brother Shaw. Go ahead.
And if you know anything about history, which you do, I'm sure a lot of folks on this know, there was a time where they didn't know how to make iron swords. Mm-hmm. They used to have brass swords, copper, brass. And then Romans came with iron. Iron is stronger than brass. And before that, because they had wood. But the iron is something else. An iron sword, and then the money. The money has, the money coins were brass. So that's something too.
Right. So we see that this next beast was not only does it describe this beast specifically as being dreadful and terrible, but in Daniel 7, verse 18, it gave it a specific emphasis on what it was doing, not to the nations, but to Yah's holy ones. It says that the holy ones of the Most High shall take the kingdom from at this point in history. Take the kingdom and possess the kingdom forever and ever. And then later on, earlier, this whole chapter is basically emphasizing on the fourth beast time frame. So when we go further up, it says in verse 8, the last thing we said was that there was a little horn that came up among 10 horns. Horns, what does the horns represent in scripture? Is in Daniel chapter 7, verse 20. It says, and the 10 horns which were on his head, and the others which came up and were before him, fell 3, even that the horn that had the eyes and the mouth spake great things, whose look was more stout than his fellows. And then he says, I beheld the same horn made war with the holy ones and prevailed against them. So we see that this was a specific horn that rose up against his other fellow horns. Horns. What does horns represent? Brother Joseph, you want to say something, bro?
Oh, yes. Not necessarily about the horns, but I could have waited till you finish your point. It was more so about you mentioned the time frame after you mentioned we talked about the saints possessing the kingdom. That word saints kind of gives us an indication of the time period, because the word saints indicates the time when the redemption had come, and it talks about them possessing the kingdom. They took possession of the kingdom. And so just a couple of keywords in that particular verse that you mentioned, 23.
Right. It's directly correlated with the kingdom being set up in Daniel 2, where it says the kingdom was set up at the time of the feet with the iron mixed with clay, and the stone hit that feet, and then it grew into a mountain that filled the whole earth. Brother Nathaniel, go ahead, brother, and then Brother Wes.
Yeah, there we go. Oh, can you hear me?
Yeah.
You said yes?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I didn't hear. Yeah, Brother Joseph, you had mentioned about the saints. I did a study on that recently. So you brought up a point. The word for saints, like for instance, Ephesians 2:19. You are no longer strangers and foreigners, but fellow citizens of the set apart ones and members of the household of Elohim. That word for set apart ones is G40, hagios, saints. So saying that you are no longer that word hagios, it actually would mean like kedoshim, set apart ones. Another for instance that we have is like in Second Peter, First Peter 2:5. It talks about you also as living stones being built up a spiritual household, a set apart priesthood, a saintly priesthood, and that's that same word that they use in Revelation 17:6, that woman drunk with the blood of the set apart ones, the kedoshim. That doesn't necessarily just mean from Messiah's pointing on, talking about the household of Elohim, Yasharal. That would go all the way back even to Abel. Would be the kedoshim, the set apart ones. The members of the household of the firstborn of Yahuah. So I just kind of want you to do a research on that if you want to look at that word saints. It's actually G40 hagios. It means the set apart. It doesn't necessarily just mean from Messiah's point forward. The word saint doesn't even exist. That's a fictitious word. That
Right. All of Yah's people is referred to as the set apart ones. From the moment they received the Ruach to the time Messiah came to after, so it's not necessarily emphasizing on that particularly, but it is referring to when we're looking at I agree. So
been injected in there.
Right, the word saint is just that's kind of like that's just an interpretation thing, but it is talking about the holy ones. So
what brother said about the timeline.
Yeah,
right. The timeline was what I was going to say about the stone, being with the timeline of the clay and iron feet with the set apart ones. That does match up.
Okay. Right. Go ahead, Brother Joseph.
Well, yeah, I was just going to say to that. I mean, if you're looking at the whole verse, when I mentioned saints, I was just kind of reading it for the word. Yes, if we break it down, the set apart ones. But if we look at the verse and we look at the whole totality of the Bible, just kind of like you mentioned, Jadiel, the scripture kind of interprets itself. We take everything back to the beginning, Genesis 1:26, as far as why he created mankind, or in the beginning what he said to mankind. In Genesis 1:26, he says he came to give us dominion. And Yahusha, in Romans 5:17, if I'm not mistaken, says that he's the second Adam. Or Romans 5 altogether talks about the second Adam and how much more the greater he restored that to us. And then he said it himself that he put the kingdom inside of us and these different things throughout the Bible. And so when it talks about here in verse 23, it's very clear to me. And then you talk about the timeline. At the end, it talks about this is towards the end. The saints or the set apart ones, or my Bible says the Kodishim, took possession of the kingdom, or took possession of the reign.
Right.
So if he puts something inside of you and you don't know you have it, or he put something inside of you and then the truth, right? The truth sets you free and you learn you have it, you're able to. So I just see a lot in that one verse. And you brought it up as far as timeline.
I agree. Definitely that in Daniel 7:23, it is emphasizing a specific point in history, which is during the time of this beast that's starting to devour the holy ones, the set apart ones. I think Nate was emphasizing on what you mentioned when he said that the word saints actually is emphasizing the timeline, and I think Nathaniel was trying to say that this word, it was utilized before this particular time in history, so it's not exclusive. But he said he agreed with you that in Daniel 27:23.
That's what I wanted to clarify. I was more so talking about that.
He was just talking about the word being more general rather than only for this point in time. Wes, go ahead, brother.
You gonna go into the little horn? I don't want to get.
No, you're gonna go into it.
Okay. Okay. Well, I just wanted to bring up about the 10 horns, because we know in history, the Roman Empire had 10 divisions, and then it mentions this little horn that comes up, and it's different from all the other ones, and it was stronger than all the other ones. And it mentions how it subdued 3 of them. So we know in Daniel chapter 7, verse 24, we know that horns is referring to powers or kings. And this little horn plucked up 3 of them, or subdued 3 of them. And in history, there's only one nation that came up, or I said nation, but one power that came up that actually subdued 3 of the 10 divisions, or of those 10 kings, which we know in history was the Vandals, Hulis, and Ostrogoths were the 3, and the power that took at that time was Papal Rome.
All right. So when we're looking at, right, no, because you have the beast. The beast had 10 horns, right? Daniel 7 verse 23. It says that the 10 horns. Verse 24. It says the 10 horns out of this kingdom are 10 kings that shall arise. Another shall rise, shall rise after them, and he shall be diverse from the first. He shall be different. He's not a regular ruler. Now, when Rome had 10 kingdoms, and we see this in the Brit Hadashah in the New Testament, they had King Herod, King Pilate. They had multiple Herods. They had Agabus, King Agabus, Justice. They had different kings,
Governors,
different provinces, right? Different governments set up in the same empire. So this is not a different beast. It's the same 4th beast with 10 different rulers over those 10 different provinces, like what Wesley was mentioning. But then there was one that was different from another, meaning all of them were kings. All of them were regular, pagan kings. But there was this one that was different that came up and started ruling in Rome. Now remember, during the 10 divisions, Caesar was already there. So he didn't rise up after. There was a ruler that came up in the Roman Empire that was different, but came up and required that type of rulership or that type of obedience. Does anybody know what that horn was in the
Catholic Church, the Pope, the Catholic Church?
Absolutely. King Empire Justinian, he gave the army to the Bishop of Rome to enforce its dogmas, meaning its teachings on the nations. And when nations didn't abide by those teachings, then the Bishop of Rome utilized the army of Rome and eliminated them and called them a heretic. That's why we see in history, we have the Roman Empire, and then all of a sudden we have the Holy Roman Empire coming out of nowhere. How it go from Justinian, Caesar, Charlemagne, Constantine, and then it goes to Pope Gregory, Pope Leo. Now the Pope actually determined who would be emperor after Justinian died. It was the Pope that actually put Charlemagne, if anybody knows Charlemagne, he was an empire in the Kingdom of Rome. It was the Pope that suggested Charlemagne be emperor, and he became emperor because of the words of the Pope. It was the Bishop of Rome that began to run the army, and we're going to see a lot of that in prophecy in Daniel as we go along. When you see Daniel chapter 11, you're going to see a lot of this guy that's behind the scenes using flatteries. You could look at every single medieval movie, and there's always like this wicked bishop telling the king what to do. It's like it's not like a hidden historical fact that even this country, the people that came to this country, the Puritans, right? What did they come to this country for?
Religious freedom, fleeing persecution.
From who? From who?
From the Catholic Church.
From the Catholic Church and from the King of England.
Yeah.
Why would they have to run away from the Catholic Church? if they under the authority of the King of England, because the king gave the authority over to that church, and that church began not only to rule that same horn, not only ruled in Rome, but continued to rule throughout history amongst different kings, influencing different nations. Now we're not going to look at all the elements involved, because of course you have Illuminati, you have all these other influences that's in this corrupt situation, but we're looking at the iron. The iron was there, and then now we have the iron is the element that's all the way at the time that the kingdoms are set up. So the iron is definitely involved at the time that the stone is set up, the kingdom is set up, the iron is still there trying to mingle with the seeds of men, according to Daniel chapter 2. Let me go to a couple hands. They just went up. Wes, go ahead, brother.
I just, final thing to mention on the little horn here. The little horn, if you go to Daniel 7, 20, 21, and 22, it's the little horn at this point that is making war with the saints until, verse 22, until the Ancient of Days come and judgment was given to the saints. So that shows what power is doing these things, and it's not some other nation or group or whatever that someone can make up. It has to, fit with this description.
Absolutely. So this last, the feet with the toes, 10 toes, by the way, we have 10 horns, by the way. And then we go a little bit further. We have the feet with the 10 toes. Then we have a little bit further, because in Daniel 7, one horn uproots 3 of them. So it's no longer 10. It's now one little short horn ruling over 7 horns. So it's not the same type of kingdom as in Daniel 2. It's giving us a little bit more description of what happened in this empire. So let me let Nathaniel go, and then Brother Joseph go. Go ahead, Nathaniel.
With that timeline there, though.
Right.
You can hear me okay?
Yeah.
So I was going to mention, so like Revelation 12:6, the woman fled into the wilderness, where she has a place prepared by Elohim to be nourished there 1,260 days. And then verse 14, and the woman was given 2 wings of a great eagle to fly into the wilderness to her place where she is nourished for a time, times, and half a time. So I highlighted those 2 points there, of time, times, and half a time,
right,
and 1,260 days, which is similar to what we see in Revelation, 11:2, talk about trampling for 42 months, and then 11:3, the 2 witnesses prophesying for 1,260 days. So we see that 42 months equals 1,260 days equals time, times, and half a time.
right.
I don't want to get too lost on this rabbit trail, but just briefly, when you look at Genesis 7:11, 7:24, 8:3, and 8:4, you get month 2, day 17, right. 150 days of the water. At the end of the 150 days, verses 8:4 of Genesis says month 7, day 17. So month 2, day 17, month 7, day 17. The 17s cancel out. You have 7 months minus 2 months. You have 5 months. So 150 days, 5 months divided by 150 is 30 days in a cycle. Which is where you get 360 days in a year at 12 times 30 months in a cycle. 12 months is 360 days. And when you do the math, I'm just kind of sharing this for some people that maybe haven't been, keyed into this, is when you see times, and half a time, as we see there in Daniel chapter 7:25, the scriptures that I listed, Revelation 8:2, 11:2, and 3, connect 42 and 1,260, and then Revelation 12:6 and 12:14 connect 1,260 times, and half a time. And so when you take 1,260 divided by 360 days in a year, you get 3.5 years. 42 months is exactly 3.5 years, according to a 12-month cycle. So I just kind of wanted to share that Daniel 7:25 of time, and half a time. When you see that number can be looked at in multiple ways. Kind of like if I were to ask you, which is longer, 1 foot 12 inches or 24 half inches. It's all the same distance. It's just a different way of determining it. You know, and the last point that I'll share now that we kind of have that numbers down is given into it for times, time, and half a time. And I'm sure, you know, as you shared with, you know, the year 538, I'm sure you're familiar with that year, right? Yeah, right. With Justinian the Great, with 538, you know, 1,260 years later is 1798, when Napoleon the Great, you know, went in and captured Pope Pius VI, and then he died in captivity. So that's 1,260 years later from 538 Justinian the Great to 1798. But I just recently came across another one, and then take a look at this. So in the year 321 AD, anyone that knows that's the sabbatical edict of Constantine. That's when the Roman system first started changing the law and the times and the law. So the Sabbath is not just part of the law, but it's also a holy day. It's a moed, you know, Leviticus 23:2. When you look at the year 321 AD and you go 1,260 years later, you come to the year 1,581. And in 1581, the Parliament of the United Kingdom made Roman Catholicism illegal in their government, and they kicked out the power of Rome 1,260 years later from 321. I don't know if you've seen that one. I just got that in my notes. Like just a couple weeks ago, I learned that. But either way, if you go from 538 to 1798 or 321 to 1581, you see Daniel 7:25 in that. I know it's a little bit long, a lot of numbers, but you know, just share that.
Yeah, no, that's probably we'll have to go and research that, but that's interesting. Definitely interesting. All right, who's it? Oh, Brother Daniel and then Brother Shaw. Joseph, sorry.
Yeah, no, that's fine. I was just really quick, wanted to know, you mentioned the horns and all these different things, and somebody mentioned the Catholic Church. Where does does the UN and the Security Council specifically, I know the Catholic, I know they have something on, you know, there's certain three of them and a couple other groups, and so where does that fit in, if it does, as far as the UN and the Security Council? I'm curious.
Right. So it's in what Nathaniel was talking about. He was talking about the timeline in which this empire will rule, and then Revelation talks about the same timeline. In Daniel chapter 7, we're looking at we're going to start from verse 24, and we're going to read down, and we're going to see how this goes into the book of Revelation. Now, the book of Revelation does have 10 more horns that's going to rule with 1 hour with the beast at the end. So it's a different timeline continuing from the end of Daniel's timeline. This is why the beast in Revelation has all the elements of Daniel 7. The beast has a leopard body, bare feet, lion mouth, and it has the same elements as even the timeline. It says it will rule for 42 months, which is 3.5 years. So when we're looking at Daniel chapter 27, let's look at this, right? So we're going to start from 23. It says, thus said, the fourth beast shall be the fourth kingdom upon the earth, which shall be different from all kingdoms, shall devour the whole earth. This is the whole earth, and shall tread it down and break it into pieces. Then it says, and the 10 horns out of the kingdom of the 10 kings shall arise, and another shall rise after them. He shall be different from the first, and he shall subdue 3 kings. Verse 25, he shall speak great words against the Most High. Now he's very specific what he's focused on. All the other kings, they speak against things that they, you know, watch what else he does. And shall wear out the set apart ones of the Most High, and to think to change times and laws, which is moedims and laws. And it says, and they shall be given into his hand for a time, a times, and a dividing a time. And Nathaniel was mentioning that there's many verses that utilize these terminologies to talk about a year, 2 years, and a half a year. So it's 3.5 years. This nation is the only nation that was determined to change, not force you to do what they're doing, or sacrifice animals on your altar to change the moedim, or the times, appointed times, and the instructions of Yah, because he spoke against the Most High. This was different. So he wore out the saints, but he also spoke directly against the Most High, and in trying to change the times and laws. So there's a difference in what this kingdom did. When you're looking at the kingdom that did that, the only kingdom that tried to change the things that Yah has made, rather than force you to break what Yah has made, is the Roman Catholic Church. They are the only ones that attempted to not just make you do it, but to say that Yah changed it or gave them the authority to change it. It's the only power in history that ever did that. And I think Brother Nathaniel was talking about 321 when they was involved in that whole sabbatical law that Constantine made, changing the Sabbath, bringing the Sabbath into law. Not the Sabbath, bringing Sunday into law. And I wanted to mention something very important. When we're talking about the Roman Catholic Church, historically we have to understand what these elements came from. There's a book of Romans that Paul wrote letters to the believers in Rome. There were believers in Ephesus. There were believers in Galatia. There were believers all over the place. But there were believers in Rome. It was those believers that began to mingle with the government. That's why in history you hear about the bishop in Rome, because there was a bishop in Ephesus, there was a bishop in Galatia, there was a bishop in every province, but the bishop in Rome mingled with the government in Rome and forced all the other assemblies that was set up from the book of Acts to be conformed to what was going on in Rome. This is how the bishop of Rome became a pope. Before he was the pope, he was only referred to as the bishop. And there were bishops in Ethiopia. There were bishops all over the place where the disciples went, all the believers went. There were bishops all over the place, keeping the Shabbat, keeping the feasts, doing all these things. And historically, they actually reveal those things. I looked these things up in the historical record of the world, where it's not bias, religious bias, and they call these people Jewish sects or Jewish groups, where because they were keeping the Shabbat and they were keeping Passover and all these things, and they had to actually make laws. The first law that was put into play by Constantine was the law to keep Easter over Passover. Then afterwards, it was the Shabbat, Sunday over Shabbat. And it was a gradual thing. Constantine didn't just say, do it or die. He said, we're going to put it in law. We're going to put this in the law, and it's going to be the same as the Shabbat. But then he says, now you're going to have to keep the Shabbat or you're going to get fined. And then he said, now you're going to have to keep the Sunday or you're going to go to jail. And then it was like, now you're going to die if you don't abide by the rules. And if you look in early church history, you'll see that all these guys labeled Arians and all these guys, they're labeled heretics by the Catholic Church. It was just because they didn't go with them that they were labeled heretics. So the history on these early church leaders that were heretics were actually people that was following scripture and was killed because they didn't want to follow this church. So historically, we see here that this power rose up. It was different because it was not a political only. It was a religious power that was utilizing the political authority to force them to change times and laws. And the time that it was given is exactly what the time that it had. The Holy Roman Empire was literally ruling from the time Justinian gave him the army from 1,260 years. And then according to Revelation 13, I hope you guys are following me, this beast was wounded. It didn't die. This iron beast was wounded. And then it says in Revelation 13 that this beast's wound would be healed. That's why we have the iron, and then we have again the iron mingling with clay. So you have that combination, the iron, then you have the iron mingling with clay. You have the terrible beast, And then in Revelation, you have the beast that was wounded after 3.5 years, and then his wound was restored, and the beast started to gain his authority again. I'm not sure if any of you guys know. I think me and brother Shaw just mentioned already that the people who came to this nation originally was escaping religious persecution from this same European power, the Roman Catholic Church. And the Pope was against the law for the Pope to come to this nation at one point. The Roman Pope could not come to this nation. He could not. Matter of fact, it was against the law at one point in this nation to have Christmas. Literally, it was against the law. The Puritans said, if this is against the law because it's the Roman belief system. So that you could see that there was a transition in the people's mind. They were like, wait a minute, nah, I'm not following you. I got to get out of here for you kill me. And we don't want nothing from you in this nation. It was only until, I'm not sure if it was Kennedy or Carter, where it was the first time that the Pope came back to or visited the United States and had secret meetings with the government, with the higher officials in the United States government. Now that's a tradition. Now you have to do it. He actually came to tell our Congress how to make laws. And this is supposed to be a church and state separated government. So we're now looking at the influence first. When we get to Daniel 11, you're not going to see this horn plucking out 3. You're going to see a power that's standing behind the scenes. It says that with flatteries, it's going to crush and devour the holy ones. It's not going to stand in the forefront anymore. It's going to stand behind the scenes and rule from behind the scenes. This is what Daniel 11 is going to tell us about, but that's after the wound is healed. But as far as right now, we see the correlation of this last beast going all the way to our time. We still see this influence of this power in our government. When this government announces something on CNN, then they have to have, let me tell you this one thing that was just silly. So they're talking about the coronavirus. CNN has a priest from the Vatican telling us what they're doing about the coronavirus. They had the Twin Towers fall. Guess what? They had a news reporter in the Vatican telling us reports of what the Pope thinks about the falling of the towers. Everything that happens in this nation, we have this correspondence with this leadership of the Vatican, not just the Roman country, the Vatican specifically. You know, so it's really interesting how we need that correlation. And I think, I'm not sure if Nathaniel's going to mention it, but when you look at the front of the Vatican and you look at the I'm not sure if it's the White House or the Washington Memorial, it's literally the same design. It's the same design. Our roads are designed after the Roman size of roads. Everything that we do is based off of Roman influence in this country. But that's when we go into Revelation. When we go into Revelation, we're going to look at more closely our timeline. What does our timeline have to do with this iron nation, or this terrible beast at the time that Yah's people will be set up? So I think this is very important just to grasp, so we can know where these things go. So we're not, oh, is this over here? Is this over here? We now kind of have a stable view. This is where these kingdoms go, and they go all the way to us right now, because this iron kingdom is still here, and Yah's setting up his kingdom right now. So we need to recognize these two elements are still involved in this present history right now. And this is exactly what scripture says, that when the iron starts to mingle with the clay, that Yah is going to throw the stone at the foot, and the stone will be a kingdom set up in the time of these kingdoms. You know, so it's very important for us to know that we're literally at the end of chapters of prophecy, the end of these chapters. You know, go ahead, Brother Shaw, and then Brother Nathaniel.
Yeah, I was listening. Hallelujah. Hallelujah to you. Hallelujah to Brother Nathaniel. You listen to Brother Nathaniel, I almost forget my question. So it's wonderful to hear from him. But now, okay. Now, after you've said all of that, and you are correct, the Catholic Church, we know about the little horn and how she has taken over the world. We know that. And we also know that they have distorted so much. We know about the Spanish Inquisitions, how they were just wiping people out. Why? Because they wanted to stay with Torah. So they wiped out those leaders and believers who wanted to stay there. And then they imposed their doctrine.
Yep.
The best way in the military, when we used to capture people, and we had like a prisoner, the most effective way to get that prisoner to come to our side is to make him think that what he's doing is wrong and what we're doing is better.
Right.
And we sympathize with some of what he believed.
Right.
That's what we would do. We would capture him for interrogation. If we had the time, we could just kind of like make him think, yeah, we kind of understand where you're coming from.
Right.
Our way's a little better. So why don't we just put it together?
Oh, yeah.
So what did the Catholic Church say? Catholic Church said, now, your Shabbat is off. But we're going to have a Shabbat that's better on a Sunday because we're going to make a calendar. Remember Pope Gregory? We're going to make a calendar. So Sunday is going to be the Shabbat. It'll be the same thing. It's the same. And we're going to bring that Easter in, and we're going to connect that, and we'll just match it up with your Passover. Mm-hmm. We'll do that. And then you got some people say, okay, that ain't so bad.
You know what I want to mention, Brother Shaw?
Go ahead.
Very important in what you were saying. When you change something, right, you have to have it first. You can't change something that you don't have. You can't change something like when we change, you don't change if you wasn't doing something else at one point. So their authority or main declaration is that they changed the Shabbat. How do you change the Shabbat unless you was keeping it first? Like I said, this is the Assembly of Rome that was corrupted. They were not only, they were keeping the Shabbat. They were keeping these things. That's why, like what you said, it was easy for them because they understood the elements. Right. They understood how to connect it because they're like, we're doing this, but we're compromising. So in order to help you compromise, we have to let you know we know the Shabbat, but let's do Sunday too. Let's do both until
we'll make it better because the way that you guys do it, y'all got that new moon you're worried about, and sometimes it falls on a different, this is a little bit easier and so forth. Now, the easiest way, like I said, what we did in the Marine Corps and what we did in the military, we get that prisoner. We tell that prisoner, you are right. But we got a system that a little better than what we got. And then he'll start seeing things our way. The Catholic Church did the same thing the serpent did in Bereshit. He walks up to Yahuah, and he's not telling Yahuah to reject the Father. He just kind of clarify what the Father really means. So, Yahuah said, we're not supposed to touch the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. He said, no, you can go ahead. He know you're going to be an Elohim, but you're not going to die. You watch, you're not going to die. So he massages her and he gets her to comply. And what did the Catholic Church do? He gets some of these Hebrew people and also some believe, after he killed the leadership, to comply, to compromise. And where are we today? Which lead me, brother and sisters, to where we are. Now, we know the influence of the Catholic Church have mixed what we believe with their doctrine. We know that. They got some good stuff. They talk about Messiah. They change his name. They talk about his Talmudim. They changed their name. They talk about the prophets. They changed their name. But they said, yeah, we're talking about the same people. And they bring in their corruption, their paganism, and mix it. What are we going to do about it? Are we going to come out from under it? Or are we going to stand pat? Now, why am I saying this? And y'all might cut me off. If we're going to do this, if we're going to study, we better come all the way with it. So we need to start being more accurate with who we talk about. When we talk about Yohanan, we're saying Yohanan, not John. That's not his name. Peter, it's not Peter, there's Kepha. No Jesus, there's Yahusha. And this is one of the biggest things we got to do. Shabbat. Most people believe that Shabbat is on a Saturday. Sometimes it can fall on a Saturday, but it's just happenstance, coincidence. What are we going to do? Are we going to follow the system they had in place? Or are we going to say, well, we're going to do most of what we're going to reject most of what the Catholic Church put together, but when it comes to their Gregorian calendar, we're going to stand pat. What are we going to do? I tell you what this house is doing. When it comes to Shabbat, which happens to be tonight, by the way, it just happened to fall on a Friday and then tomorrow night. We have decided we are going to follow as best we can what the Father set up according to his systems in the sky. So anyway, that's it.
So with certain things, we really, because those are specific topics. So we really can't just mention them as absolutes if you're dealing with other people such as myself who studied it and disagrees, So it's kind of like we understand the point of what you're saying. We're not going to follow after tradition. We're going to follow after what we see the scripture reveals as absolute truth. One thing that we always got to mention in our minds that we were wrong many times before. So we can't just jump out with stances as absolute truth, but we need to bring it and say, this is what I believe scripture is revealing as absolute truth in a dialogue. I wouldn't be able to say, if I brought up, something that I believe, like, oh, lunar Sabbath is this, and this is not what I wouldn't do that, because I know that some people believe in those type of things. And plus, we don't have that time right now to kind of dissect it. So to say, I'm going to follow Yah because I'm doing this here, is kind of not fair to everyone here that's not doing exactly what you're doing. It's kind of like being told that everyone here is going against Yah because they're doing the seventh day, or what people call Saturday. So I just want to kind of, because we're not going to go into that conversation right now, but just to let you know that sometimes people who disagree with you, it may not be necessarily a good approach to just say everybody, I'm going to follow Yah. What are you going to do? Instead of saying, hey guys, let's talk about this so we can see if we could get to one accord with these beliefs. Because I believe there's a possibility that I could be wrong, but I believe in what I believe. You believe in what you believe, and I understand that you also believe you're not infallible as well. No man is. So we need to actually set up a dialogue where we can actually talk about this topic, and because we can't just bring it in as snippets and say, I'm gonna follow Yah, what are you gonna do, in these different, you know what I mean? So it's better, let's set up a dialogue, which I believe that this group at least had that dialogue 3 different times. So another time won't be bad. Our motto is to investigate everything that's brought before us, even if it's the same thing multiple times, because at the end of the day, this is what I tell people. when they say, oh yeah, I spoke about that, I studied that already, and I'll say, yeah, but you didn't speak to me about it. You didn't study it with me. So likewise, I've never studied with you, Brother Shaw. You could bring out something that I've never even seen before. You know, there's always that possibility that we always got to be open to that possibility. You know, but we got to make sure that we're bringing it up at a time where we can all kind of defend our point, and not necessarily defend our point, but share and interact with the conversation. Nathaniel, go ahead, brother.
You know, bringing back to Rome, you had mentioned a comment. You said Passover or Easter was before Passover. What is your date on when Easter? I have 325 at the Council of Nicaea. Do you have a date on when Easter was brought into law? Or
you have 325.
I know it was a little bit ago.
You have Easter,
yeah, 325 AD. Yeah,
as being brought into law.
Well, because you had mentioned that he brought Easter in first, and then Passover. I was wondering what date are you using for Easter? Because there's 2 dates for Passover that I see. There's one with the 321, which is kind of like the civil law of
That's what I was emphasizing on the heightened aspect. Like when he brought in the Shabbat change in 321, it was a civil. It wasn't necessarily
right.
It wasn't I'm either do this or die. It was like, this is the government. This is what we put into play. We're not stopping you from doing that, but you have to do this. Then after a while, we saw that it was like, if you don't do this, you get fined. You know, we saw the growth or the swelling of that law. You know what I mean? So that's probably what I was emphasizing on. Not necessarily a law put in place where it's emphasizing, but Easter was involved in the Sunday influence, bringing Sunday into that light. You know.
Yeah,
Easter
I see the Council of Nicaea, 325, and then I think the ecumenical law did come after. That was I see variation on numbers 336 to 337 AD, the Council of Laodicea, and then I see some people counting the Council of Laodicea from 363 to 364 was the Council of Laodicea. But either way, that's after that. That's after that Easter law. Yeah, we see like the civil Sabbath regulation change, and then we see the Council of Nicaea, which is bringing Easter into it, and then we see like an ecumenical law later on. So I just wanted to say that, you know, they're I kind of 2 different pieces. I wanted to bring up one other point was they say the definition of crazy is doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result. But I'm gonna give a different definition of crazy. Here's a definition of crazy in my book. The definition of crazy. We're warned in the scriptures, Daniel chapter 2 and 7, and Revelation 13. We're warned in the scriptures about a kingdom known as Rome. And Rome comes in and conquers Judea, military occupied in 37 BC. Augustus turns it into an empire, 27 BC to 14 AD. He rules specifically. Rome kills the king around 30 AD. I mean, different dates, but around that point in time, 30 AD. Rome comes and destroys the capital city in 70 AD. Rome is cutting down all the heads of congregations, anyone standing up and opposing them. They're cutting them down, killing them, hunting, persecuting. Same point in time, wolves in sheep's clothing are entering into the flock, teaching strange doctrines, tickling their ears. 2 Thessalonians 2, fallen ocean, the great persecution, and the military of Rome hunts down the remaining followers until the Edict of Milan, 313. Constantine and the system that he sets up starts changing, amalgamating, twisting the whole law, the whole holy set-apart days, changing the law, changing the whole system. So to boil it all down, the definition of crazy is the raping, lying, murdering thieves who were warned about 500 years before they came into existence, who conquered the kingdom, who killed the king, destroyed the capital city, hunted down all the followers for the next couple hundred years, sitting down in the seat that we or anyone would listen to them as the authority. as listen to those people how can you listen to, if you have a family and a mother and a father, and someone comes in and kills the mom and the dad, starts raising the children, and the little children start calling those raping, lying, murdering thieves who killed mommy and daddy, and they start calling the killers mommy and daddy, I got a problem with that. And I think anyone who is a reader of the scriptures should have a problem with listening. That's the definition of crazy, is listening to the very people that we're warned about who twisted the whole system in the first place. How can you listen to them who did all that and sit in this as the quote unquote representation of that organization? That's crazy to me. So
absolutely. Now here's one principle in scripture: spiritual things are spiritually understood. So the same people that can kill your parents can kill the parents of a person who's not spiritual, can also convince that non-spiritual person that they've changed, that they've done something different now, that it's not about what you need to follow with me. Everybody's going to the heavens. Everybody's going. Matter of fact, one word for me and you're out of purgatory now. There was even a time a couple months ago, not months ago, like probably last year, the Pope said that he released everyone in purgatory to heaven. So this is how you get a group of people who's not spiritually understanding things to follow you. You appeal to their flesh. You appeal to their emotion. You appeal to their sentimental mindset. And once you get their emotion, you can steer the thinking. Well, how you think people are, you have these transgenders right now. We can't even say pronouns. Why? Because of the steering of that mind. The allowing that emotion to guide the reality rather than reality, so I agree with you. If you are you submitted to Yah, you follow Yah, and you're giving into this sentimental, emotional, fleshly leading steering of your mind, then this is why Yah says in 2 Thessalonians, those who do not love the truth, they will be deceived, and it's due to those people. Once we get rid of the way that we think, we submit our mind completely to the word of Yah. The one moment we steer our mind away from that, it says that destruction is due to you. So, you would have to now figure out two things. Does this person have surrendered their thinking to Yah and his word, or have this person never even understood what they were supposed to understand? So that's kind of how we need to interact. We come approach people, we give people the benefit of the doubt. Maybe you don't understand, because spiritual things are spiritually understood. But after I see that you understand, yeah, it's all your fault. You are giving yourself whatever happens, but when you look at it, it does look crazy. Mecca, go ahead, brother, and then Brother Joseph. And then we're going to close.
Yeah, so what I was going to say, just looking at, the iron, the iron mixed with clay, looking at the iron mixed with clay. One thing we know is that in the beginning, Yahuwah spoke his word into Adam, and Adam was made from clay. So Adam was essentially, given the commandments in the Torah, and, it may have been verbal at the time, oral, in the early on, things were, kept orally. And so that was the first introduction of the Torah, or what some Christians may say today as the church, because that's when the commandments were originally given, and we know, prayer and worship began with, Adam, as man, the first man We began with Adam and Yahuah and their offspring. So that was the beginning of the first church. So the first church was made with clay, and we see, or derived from clay, which is man. And so in this, when you're looking at the Catholic, the Roman Empire mixing in with the church, that's where the iron and clay come together. Is that you have Yah's word, which was for man, who was made from clay, and now you have this kingdom that's taken Yah's word and distorted it, mixed their own ways in with it to create, their rulership, which makes up their, how they rule and govern, and I really like how Brother Shah had mentioned, that that divisiveness, and how you change little things here and there, to make it seem as if your ways are, inferior, I guess, or, to theirs, and their ways are better. And, I just finished a Sabbath teaching, and one thing I learned during it was that, like, there's, what was his name? Ignatius, he was looking at the Jewish Sabbath and saying, the Jewish Shabbat, and saying, okay, well, let's not keep it after the manner of, with, the Yahudim, because the Yahudim are, the way they keep it is, the Shabbat day is a day of idleness. It's a day, where they eat the food prepared the day before. He's saying and he was already trying to convince them, oh, let's keep it in a spiritual manner. This was like in the 2nd century, I believe. And he's trying to say, let's keep it in this spiritual manner, to where, we meditate on the law, but then, we don't have to worry about resting our bodies. And I'm just, as I'm reading and learning this, I'm like, wow, like he's like the whole purpose of the Shabbat, was, to rest our bodies, to give us, to refresh ourselves, and so that all mankind and creation could rest at once, and, just to see how they distorted that to say, oh, well, let's do it like this. And then they introduce it, and then we're going to keep in what they call Sunday, the day of resurrection. He calls it the queen and chief of all the days. That's what they labeled Sunday as, the Lord's Day, and I was just like, wow, just seeing how they try to manipulate things, making it seem as if the Yahudim's ways are bad, and just trying to point out, what they would consider, to be things that are inconvenient. But, it's really interesting how that came to pass. And then you see Constantine later, coming in and establishing, a Sunday worship, a Sunday as a day off from work, and that being their Sabbath, and so, I just found it really interesting how they did that. I like what Brother Shah had brought out, the divisiveness behind, them. And, I was just meditating because I heard somebody put it that way, that Adam was made from clay, and he initially was the head of the first, what we would say is assembly, but they would say, church, but that it was, that mixing in, that's that mixing in with the word of Yah, that gave life to man, and the Roman that makes the iron and the clay together.
Right. And just to back up your point that you was making, Daniel chapter 2. Daniel chapter 2, specifically talking about our time frame, the end, the last part of the statue, verse 41. And look at the difference between verse 41 to 43. Watch this. It says, whereas you saw the feet and the toes part of potter's clay and part iron, the kingdom shall be divided, but there shall be in it of the strength of the iron, for as much as you saw the iron mixed with miry clay. Then it says, all right, so mixed with miry clay. So potter's clay is usually when you have the potter molding the clay at the time, right? So it's moldable. That word miry, it's a Chaldean word teen, right? And there's a root word, it's H2917, and there's a root word H2916. And it means clay, but it means dirty. It means muddy, sticky. Does a potter use sticky clay? No. Does a potter use muddy, dirty clay? No. Potter's clay is different from miry clay. So we see that it was a mixture. Potter's clay, like what you mentioned, it was a group of people who did know. That's why they were trying to change something that they did know. You see, and that's why they compromised first, because it wasn't that they didn't do it on certain days. They kept the Shabbat on the Shabbat, but the pagans kept Sunday on Sunday. So what they did was they declared, and you can look through, they don't hide anything. This Catholic Church, they don't hide anything that they do, because they already understand. If you're going to go against them, you're going to go against them. But if they know that they already got all the powers that be on their side already. So you can look up what they said historically, what they have in their own books, what they have in their own, what they call encyclicals, all the encyclicals of all the bishops of Rome throughout history. You can see the things that they say. And they say that this is the authority. This is the manifestation of the authority that they were able to change. And they use the term feast and Sabbath or Shabbats, that they were able to change the feasts and the Shabbats. So it's very interesting that they would tell you that this is a mark of our authority, that we changed Yah's laws. They even took out the second, they took out the second commandment with the graven images, and they extended the 10th one into the 9th and 10th. They're changing Yah's laws, and that's why the Daniel chapter 2 and Daniel chapter 7 describes it as them speaking great words against the Most High, because it's a direct rebelliousness. It's going directly against the Most High. It's not one of those. It's not like Antiochus, who just in his own Greek pagan mind wanted to sacrifice pigs on Yah's altar because he was the king. He wanted to show his power. It's not like how Belshazzar, who took all the cups that was from the temple of Yah and put his wine in it and try to drink it it's not like people who wanted to do their own thing. This was a power that was different. He took Yah's things and tried to say, we changed it. That's why when Nathaniel was talking about the Council of Nicaea, why is the Council of Nicaea set up? Constantine set up the Council of Nicaea because they were already arguing about these false things with all the believers. So what Constantine said was, you come together, the Bishop of Rome, you come together and establish this truth and make everybody else follow it so we can have order in the empire. That's how it started. It wasn't that they just Council of Nicaea here, oh, let's start this topic. No, they started like what Brother Shaw was saying, putting it in the ears, teaching it they translated the scriptures into Latin and nobody else could read it. All the peasants, it wasn't even in the peasants' language. It wasn't even in nobody's language. Nobody could read it. It was referred to as a dead book and nobody could understand it unless a priest read it. So by that time, you have people like Tertullian and different people like, wait a minute, that don't make sense. That don't make sense. You have Martin Luther's like, wait a minute, that doesn't make sense. That doesn't sound like faith. You're telling me I gotta pay for my salvation when salvation is free because of Messiah's death. So you have people that are priests. Remember, these guys are priests. The first ones that died from that whole Latin regime were priests that could read the scripture in Latin and was like, nah. Yah gave them that conviction and they were like, this is not right. Martin Luther nailed 99 things that was wrong with the Catholic Church. That was only the first time. And then as we continue to go through the Protestant movement, everyone who protested against this power was referred to as a Protestant. Now they're not Protestants anymore. But I want to let me close this. Let me close this long video.
Shalom, Akuti, and Brohim. Thank you so much for viewing this video. We hope it was helpful to your walk in the truth. Remember to always search the scriptures on your own, to study Abba's word and show yourself approved, according to 2 Timothy 2:15. We invite you to study with us. To join us in a live study, just go to our website at assemblyofyahuah.com and click the Join Us tab. We have something available Wednesday through Saturday of every week. If you've been Baruch or blessed by this video today or any other study, we encourage you to go to the Giving tab on our website. Our elders all have their own ways of income, so none of the giving or proceeds go to them. Instead, it goes to biblical assembly needs. We also encourage you to subscribe to our YouTube channel so that you don't miss any new videos. We sincerely pray that Abba continues to direct your path as you acknowledge Him in all your ways. Much avaha, and again, shalom.